Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Linda Lee, and I would like to welcome everyone to another fantastic year of the Exploring Census Data webinar series. For those of you that have been following our series, welcome back. Thank you, loyal listeners. For anyone that may be new to our series, the Exploring Census Data webinar series is a set of webinars where we present data from the Census Bureau by topics. Other features of the series, the webinars are presented on a monthly basis, so please stay tuned for new and exciting topics in upcoming months. Another feature includes access to the archived copies, and the recording of this session, along with the slides and transcript, will be available in about 5 to 10 business days. Today, we will be providing you with information and data on the services sector of the economy. You'll learn about both business and demographic data available to help you with your research and make informed business decisions. Now, with that being said, we have 4 speakers lined up for you today that are experts in their field and ready to impart their knowledge on the topic. You'll be able to ask questions using the Q&A feature throughout the webinar, and our experts will be available to you at the end of the presentation as well. Up first, representing the survey's annual survey are our survey statisticians, Mr. Daniel Waters and Ms. Teresa Apple. Dan and Terry are a dynamic duo that will be tag teaming to present information on the services sector, highlighting employer businesses. After Dan and Terry, we have Ms. Erlene Dowell. Erlene is a supervisory program analyst specializing in the Longitudinal Employer Household Dynamics program, also commonly referred to as the LEHD. Erlene will be diving into the workers within the service industry and providing several data tools needed to extract the data. Then our next speaker is Mr. Charles Gamble. Charles is a supervisory survey statistician from the American Community Survey. Charles will be presenting the demographic aspect of the industry. So before we dive into today's session, please note that we are utilizing technology off-site and that we aim to provide you with the best experience possible. Should we experience any technical delays during our session, please utilize the chat feature to let us know of issues, and we will mitigate them as soon as possible. Our agenda for today, we will be diving into a brief background about the Census Bureau before we explore the services sector. Please note that at the bottom of this slide, we provided the location of our archived recordings for you here. Along with that, if you're interested in stories behind the data, please check out the America Accounts page where you'll be able to access the stories. We also have data visualizations for you that you can use for your own needs. And all of these resources are free and available on census.gov under the library section of the site. The Census Bureau is the federal government's largest of the 17 statistical agencies, where we conduct over 130 surveys each year, with some of our well-known surveys listed here. First on the list, many people recognize the decennial census, which takes place every 10 years, and it counts the population and housing. Next is the American Community Survey, which is a yearly survey on the nation's population. From the business data side of the house, we have the Economic Census that measures American businesses. For the public sector's counterpart of the Economic Census, we have the Census of Governments. Now, this is the official 5-year measure of the nation's state and local government sector. Our mission is to serve as the leading source of quality data. So with that, it may be helpful to know the structure of our data releases. We have a range of release frequencies from the decennial to quinquennials, annuals, and monthlies. Now, it's good to note that there is an inverse relationship between frequency of releases and the level of details. So for instance, using the surveys listed on this slide, the Economic Census takes place every 5 years, and it is the most comprehensive source for business data. Now, while the service annual survey is more timely, the level of details is reduced. Here you'll notice that for business data, we have 17 monthly and quarterly surveys, with some of our widely used ones, such as the retail and wholesale trade surveys listed here. The monthly and quarterly surveys include programs that serve as a key economic indicator. And we have 20 economic surveys that are released annually. So with over 130 surveys, I highly encourage you to check out our site and discover the possibilities. Because the Economic Census is our largest undertaking for business data, it's good to know that it takes place every 5 years in the years ending in 2 and 7. So the 2022 Economic Census is right around the corner. The survey will be conducted in 2023 with businesses reporting their 2022 year-end numbers. To learn more about the program, please check out the link in the third bulleted point here that will take you directly to the program's main page. The data is available to you for free for nearly every industry and geography right down to the place level. And this type of information can be helpful in making informed business decisions. So with that, I would like to turn the presentation over to our first speaker, Mr. Daniel Waters.
All right, thank you, Linda. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today, Terry and I are going to be talking to you about some of the data our services area produces and what this data tells us. So we're going to start by talking about the Services Annual Survey. Okay, so services is comprised of 12 sectors of the economy as defined by the North American Industry Classification System, or as you're going to hear us refer to it, NAICS. So here's a list of the NAICS, and actually there is going to be a webinar on healthcare a little later on in this series. So if you want to learn more information about that, stay tuned for that one. Okay, but today Terry and I are going to focus on the industries that we specialize in: 71, arts, entertainment, and recreation, and 72, accommodation and food services. And now we're going to go to this infographic that you can find on census.gov to just give a little overview of services and what's happening. Okay, so this is basically how the services industries are trending in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So as you can see, in 2018, you can basically see that the trends are pretty consistent across the board and nothing really stands out. In 2019, across all of services, overall, not a lot happens here. The trends are pretty consistent and you don't see a lot of change in the industries overall. Then, as I think a lot of you are aware, something called the pandemic happened and a lot shifted in the services industries. And as you can see here, accommodation and food services and arts, entertainment, and recreation were two of the hardest hit ones. So now I'm going to turn it over to Terry to talk about the arts, entertainment, and recreation area, or Sector 71. Take it away, Terry.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Hopefully, all right, there. Good afternoon. My name is Terry Apple, and I work in the Accommodations, Entertainment, and Consumer Services branch within the economy-wide division at the U.S. Census Bureau. So I'll present today some data related to NAICS 71, Arts, Entertainment, and Recreation. NAICS overall is an acronym for North American Industry Classification. We use this from 2012 for the Service Annual Survey. It's a system numerically classifying businesses agreed upon by the US, Canada, and Mexico. And we can include a link in the chat if you'd like to learn more about this numerical system. And there's also some resources at the end if you want to understand a little bit better about why or how we're using these numbers. So NAICS 71 is a broad sector of the economy and encompasses a lot of the fun stuff, I guess. So we'll look at the Sector 71 three-digit definition. 711, performing arts, spectator sports, and related industries include the performing arts, such as ballet, theater companies, and music groups, spectator sports, professional basketball, football, and soccer, and those related to performance and events, from promoters to talent. 712 are museums, historical sites, and similar institutions, includes places generally planted, as in the case of the botanical garden, and have a permanent place, museums, zoos, historical sites. And 713, amusement, gambling, and recreation industries, includes places of recreation such as gambling without hotels attached, amusement parks and arcades, bowling centers, gyms, and sports facilities. A quick look at revenue from the Service Annual Survey in millions of dollars for Sector 71 overall between the years 2013 and 2020 shows a steady increase from 2013 to 2019. As the economy grew, and shows the 29.1% decrease that was shown on the infographic in 2020. It's interesting to note how similar the lines from 2020 and 2013 are. Check back this fall for the release of 2021 Service Annual Survey data to see what this sector's data will look like compared to the decrease in 2020. So let's take a closer look at the industry. The next two slides give a 4- and 5-digit breakdown of the 71 NAICS sector, because a 3-digit definition isn't enough to show the detail within this industry, especially when you're trying to lump bowling with ballet or an arcade with a museum. This is not a complete breakdown, but shows the broader and different sector definitions. So within 711, we define within the performing arts companies, the spectator sports. Then we have the performers, the agents and managers, and the independent artists, writers, and performers. 712, fairly narrow definition, so we leave that by itself. 713, we've separated into amusement parks and arcades, gambling industries, and then what encompasses a large group is the all other. And literally everything that doesn't fit within anything else, the golf courses, the skiing facilities, the marinas, fitness gyms, yoga studios, bowling centers, and everything else. So let's take a closer look within the 7-1 NAICS sector. NAICS Part 711, Performing Arts, Spectator Sports, and Related Industries, and NAICS Part 713, Amusement, Gambling, and Recreation Industries, encompass a broader expanse of different types of industries, whereas NAICS 712 is a narrower definition within the sector and includes a smaller population of organizations. Overall, a quick look at the bar chart shows 2020 revenue is notable to 2013 again. We're continuing to look at a little more detailed NAICS to determine where industry decreases impacted the NAICS 7.1 decrease. These industries shown are generally made up of indoor events where crowds would gather in bowling centers, arcades, arenas, theaters, and gyms, like 7111, the performing arts companies, which would include musical groups, theater groups, circuses, all large crowd public events that were canceled or put on hold due to the pandemic. 7113, promoters of performing arts, sports, and similar events, would include the promotion of large spectator events like music concerts, sports events, fairs and festivals, and theater events. Fitness and recreational sports centers. NAICS 71394 includes fitness gyms and yoga studios. According to news stories, gyms and sporting goods stores around the country were filing for bankruptcy due to the temporary closure of gyms and the surge in at-home workouts. We'll copy in chat a news story from Business Insider Online that reports about some of the largest of these business changes if you'd like to read more about the effects the pandemic had on NAICS 71394. Moving on. This next slide shows the NAICS industries with a lower impact on the NAICS Sector 7.1 decrease. These industries were generally outdoor venues where people felt safer to engage in due to the ability to social distance. According to Pilot Online, the Virginian Pilots online website, there was increased boat purchases and boat repairs in 2020. So much so, there was a shortage of boat inventory and labor shortages in 2020. The industry couldn't keep up with the unexpected demand. And if you'd like to read more about this story, we'll include a link in the chat. Also in the news were golf courses and country clubs, having a lower impact on the overall NAICS 7.1 decrease. After the spring closures, golf courses opened back up with record attendance, according to the Golf Digest online article. We can link that article here in the chat. According to the article, there was a surge of new golfers in 2020, likely due to many other activities closed during the pandemic year. They had to find something to do. And displayed also are skiing facilities, another outdoor venue. NAICS Sector 7.1 took a large fall in revenue from 2019 to 2020, shown by the Service Annual Survey, followed closely by NAICS Sector 72, Accommodations and Food Service. And I'll pass it back to Dan Waters, who will show what our economy looked like through the lens of this other NAICS sector.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, so now we're going to talk about 72, accommodation and food services. So this is also made up of two 3-digit subsectors. Accommodation, which provides lodging or short-term accommodation for travelers, vacationers, and others, and food services and drinking places, which prepare meals, drinks, and snacks and beverages to customer order on-premise or off-premise consumption. We'll break these down a little bit more later. But first, I want to start with an overview of what's going on in 72. Okay, so this graph looks pretty similar to the one that Terry showed for 71. You can see that from 2013 to 2019, there was a pretty steady trend. The infographic showed what was going on in 2018 and 2019, and it looks like that was pretty much very similar to what was happening from 2013 to 2017. However, 2020 had a massive dip. And I want to take a deeper look at why, and also take a look at data, which we'll get to later, that kind of proves our point in another area of analysis that we do. Okay, let's start by breaking down the why. 721 is accommodation. 721 is made up of 3 industry groups: 7211, travel accommodation; 7212, RV parks and recreational camps; and 7213, rooming and boarding houses. If you want to see data on 7212 and 7213, you can find it on census.gov. However, today I'm going to be focusing on 7211 as it is the largest industry group out of the 3 of them and the data there. Okay, so as you can see here, 72111, hotels and motels, and 72112, which make up pretty much the majority of 7211, had very large decreases. 72111 fell roughly 42%, and then 39% for 72112. So these are 2 of the largest NAICS in 72, and because of their drastic falls, it was one of the reasons why 72 fell overall. Okay, now let's take a look at 7222, food services and drinking places. This has 3 industry groups: 7223, special food services; 7224, drinking places and alcoholic beverages; and 7225, restaurants and other eating places. Once again, 7225 is one of the most impactful here. However, I wanted to talk about 2 NAICS individually here: 722511, full service restaurants, and 722513, limited service restaurants. And something interesting that I found in the data. But before I get there, I want to give a little breakdown on what this is. So full service restaurants, think about when you're going out to eat and just getting served on. Typical places that you would see, like a Fridays or Applebee's, those would fall under a full service restaurant. Whereas when I'm talking about limited service, I'm talking about fast food. So food where you're not being waited on. However, there can be a dining room, but you're not getting served. Okay, so now let's break down the data of these 2. Okay, so as you can see through time, full service was always a little bit bigger than limited service until recently, potentially. But I really just want to focus on the trend from 2019 to 2020. As you can see, for full service restaurants, there is a decrease from 2019 to 2020, whereas 722513, limited service restaurants, stays pretty stagnant. So I just wanted to take a deeper look at maybe what happened there. And one of the best ways to do this was looking at data from our Economic Census, which Linda talked about earlier, but I'm going to go into a little more detail on. So the services area, besides working on our survey for annually, we work on the Economic Census. And this is the official 5-year measure of the American business. The Economic Census has nearly 4 million locations, large, medium, and small, covering most industries in all geographic areas of the United States. Through the Economic Census for 722513, we collect these special items in a question which essentially asks establishments what type of transaction is most common, and then also where their receipts are coming from. Okay, so this first slide is basically showing for our 2012 and 2017 Economic Census, basically what were these establishments serving primarily. And as you can see, order and pay at the counter with inside seating was the majority one. However, you can see between 2012 and 2017, it remained pretty stagnant. But when you take a look at takeout / drive-through, you can see there is a bump up for 2012 to 2017. And that bump is what I want to focus on, as that is something takeout drive-through that's a little more friendly during the pandemic. I think this point is really hit home by the second one, which shows the amount of receipts done. So basically, as you can see here, order and pay at the counter did have a little shift up, but the amount of money that was being brought in by takeout and drive-through had a more drastic shift up. And I believe that you can tell the trends were already going in the direction of takeout and drive-through being preferred by customers before the pandemic. So then obviously with all of social distancing and what happened there, the businesses were already trending towards this takeout drive-through based on our economic census data. So it made sense that it wasn't hit as hard. And there's a lot of interesting trends that you can see in our data. So I definitely recommend going to our website and checking it out. So if you want to know where to go, I'm sure there's links in the chat, but you can also go to census.gov right here to this link to find out about our services annual survey. And then if you want to find out about our economic census, you can learn more about that data and some of the other cool special items that we collect at the link there. And then also, I just want to shout out to make sure to come back and see what happens with these trends for 2021, because I think these industries are going to change a lot as the pandemic changes over time. But I just wanted to thank everybody for listening, and now I'm going to turn it over to Erlene and Longitudinal.
Thank you, Dan and Terry. And thank you to Linda for the opportunity to be part of the Exploring Census Data series. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be highlighting the workforce population regarding Sector 72 using two of LEHD's data products. So first, let's just kind of talk about the LEHD product and the program and where the data comes from. LEHD products are different from other census data in the fact that our data comes from our Local Employment Dynamics or LED partnership, which is a voluntary federal-state partnership. Its main purpose is to merge employee data and employer data to produce a collection of enhanced labor market statistics with state-of-the-art confidentiality protection. Under the partnership, states send their unemployment insurance wage records and their quarterly census of employment wage data, which is then combined with censuses and surveys to create this dynamic information on workers to produce public use data products, as well as microdata for research. The UI records give us jobs data, and the QCEW gives us firm data, and our person data comes from censuses and surveys. Currently, LEHD has 3 main data sets and 2 experimental data sets. Each data set has an application for easy access. Each data set, along with each data tool, is unique in its own way. If you are curious about employment, hires, separations, turnovers, and earnings, you would look at the Quarterly Workforce Indicators, or QWI, utilizing the QWI Explorer or the LED extraction tool. If you want to look at employment for detailed and customized geography, you would look at the loads data using the On the Map or On the Map for Emergency Management data tools, and coming next year in the LED extraction tool. If you want to look at statistics on job mobility across state boundaries or industries, transitions between jobs by timing and firm or worker characteristics, or earnings changes due to job changes, you would use our job-to-job or J2J flows data using the J2J Explorer and coming soon in our LED extraction tool. One of our newer data sets is the Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes, or PSEO. This experimental data set reports earnings by institution, degree field, degree level, and graduation cohort for 1, 5, and 10 years after graduation, and is accessible through the PSEO Explorer. The current release includes 17 participating states, with more to come in the near future. Finally, we have another experimental data set called the Veterans Employment Outcomes, or VEO. This new experimental data set reports earnings and employment outcomes for U.S. Army veterans 1, 5, and 10 years after discharge by military occupation, rank, demographics, industry, and geography of employment. This is also accessible through our VEO Explorer. In addition to the data tools, raw data downloads are available, along with LEHD microdata for approved projects through our secure census research data centers. Based on an America Counts written by my LEHD colleagues titled Initial Impact of COVID-19 on Travel, Tourism, Outdoor Recreation, varied widely across states, researchers utilized the QWI dataset to look at the workers employed in tourism and related industries that rely on people traveling and the drop in tourism at the onset of the pandemic. The article goes into earnings losses and how it affected female workers more than male, and earnings losses in young workers. We'll look at that closer a little later. This is a screenshot using the QWI Explorer showing the top states of workers in accommodation and food services. Of course, some of the higher totals are due to population, but let's click on the map and go live to look at other states. So what's interesting to see is that Hawaii, my home state, we can see the drop once in the pandemic hit, and then in 2021, it continued to drop. So we'll come back to that scenario shortly. In the February LED webinar on this exact topic, extended findings of the demographics of workers in travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation was by sex and age were highlighted along with race and ethnicity. The first graph shows there are more females employed in the related industries and more younger workers. The second graph shows majority of the workers in this industry are Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders and more Hispanic and Latino ethnicity. So let's go live so I can show you how easy it is to recreate this example using QWI. So the easiest way to get there is to memorize lehd.ces.census.gov, or you can Google QWI Explorer and it should come up. But here I'm on the home page for LEHD, and under applications, all of our tools are here on the left-hand side for easy access. So I'll click on QWI Explorer. And I want to make sure that the geography level stays at the United States. We're going to keep it at the employment count. And then we're going to go ahead and change the quarters, the x-axis, to NAICS sectors. And then we're going to change the group to sex. I'm just going to also change the year. And then we're just going to look at the industry. So I'm going to unclick everything else. And I just want to look at accommodations and food services. And there we're looking at the age group, and we can see that there are more younger workers than there are older workers in this. And then we can also look at sex, which in the article, it talked about how there were more females than there were males. So that's how easy it is to just work on the QWI Explorer. So as I mentioned earlier, we would revisit the state of Hawaii and the decline of workers in food services and accommodation. So where did these workers go? Using the job-to-job flows explorer, we can see this graph that majority of them went into retail, followed by a tie in administrative and support and waste management and remediation services, and then healthcare and social services. So let's go live one more time to recreate this example. So back to our LEHD homepage, I'm going to click on J2J Explorer, which is at the top. And just to mention that all of our data tools are very intuitive, so you can see what the steps are. So obviously under start here, number 1, I'm going to click on separations from. Under the globe, I'm going to go ahead and click on Hawaii. And then all NAICS sectors, we're going to go ahead and click on accommodation and food services. So everything kind of lights up to what you can choose. If it's gray, then that's not an option for you. So we're going to go ahead and click on which industries, because we want to know where they left food, services, and accommodation, and where they went into. So here we have a bar chart, and currently it's showing accommodations, but I don't want to look at if they left accommodations and went back into accommodation. So I'm going to unclick that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on our bipartite chart. And I'm going to change this into the origin NAICS sector, which was food and accommodations. And we'll click on percentage because that's easier to look at. But as we talked about earlier, if I hover over retail trade, that was one of the larger industries that we went into, as well as the administrative, and then of course, healthcare. So with that, here are some links to the help and documentation pages for each of the data tools that I covered today. And there are tutorials, videos, and guidelines to help walk you through each of the data tools. And with that, I'll hand it off to Charles.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Arlene. My name is Charles Gamble, and I work in the American Community Surveys Office, or ACSO for short. And thus far today, in today's webinar, we provided information on establishment data from the Econ program. So let's dive a bit into the actual demographic information provided by the American Community Survey. So first, I'd like to describe some of the basics regarding the American Community Survey, which is the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for social, economic, housing, and demographic data at many geographic levels for topics such as age, commuting, income, employment, and much more. Now, per year, the ACS surveys 3.5 million residential addresses and helps to inform over 675 billion of federal funding each year. The survey itself has over 40 topics and supports 300 evidence-based government uses. Now, specifically, the data products produced by the ACS consist of the one-year estimates, and this is for larger populations of 65,000 or more. This is typically released in September, as well as the one-year supplemental estimates for smaller populations between 20,000 and 65,000, which are typically released in October, and our five-year estimates providing data regardless of population size. So this can get very granular data, which I'll discuss in just a moment when we get to the geographies. And this is typically released in December. And for our full data release schedule, you can follow the link at the bottom of the slide. It'll also be posted in the chat, and you can actually go to our webpage and see our full data release schedule. Now, building on the data products the ACS produces, the ACS provides detailed information about the population, social characteristics like educational attainment, disability, veterans, and much more, as well as the workforce statistics, which include labor force status to include employment, unemployment, full-time and part-time status, income and occupation, which includes household income, earnings, occupation, industry. And much of this data can be coupled along with other topics like race, age, sex, and much more. So these variables and more can help you focus on specific information of your target area and provide understanding of the actual workforce itself. So along with the numerous topics covered by the ACS also provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. So over 13,000 geographies for one-year estimates, 15,000 geographies for one-year supplemental estimates, and 776,000 geographies for five-year estimates. So on this slide here, you can see some of the geographies for which the ACS data are produced and the relationships actually between those geographies. So in this visualization, you can see just how granular the data can get down to those census tracts and block group levels, which are part of the five-year data product, the five-year estimates we provide here from the ACS. So as shown in the previous slide, going over the large, vast number of geographies the ACS produces estimates for, the most common of these geographies is at the state, county, census tract, and block group level. So this slide actually shows the relationship of these geographies and how they actually counter or work within one another. So here we can see the state of New Mexico and then the counties which make up the state, specifically Santa Fe. So in the census tract image, we can see the census tracts that make up Santa Fe County. And census tracts are actual statistical subdivisions within a county containing populations of 1,200 to 8,000 people. So here you want to think your small towns, rural areas, or neighborhoods. Now your census tracts are then made up of what we've referred to as block groups. And block groups have populations between 600 and 3,000 people. Now with census tracts and block groups, you can access very granular data created by the ACS. And providing data at such geographies is a great attribute of the American Community Survey itself. So in the previous slide, just went over a brief overview of the ACS. For further information on the survey, can be found actually on our ACS, or census.gov/ACS webpage. A few good places to explore on our webpage is the About the ACS, the Data, and the Technical Documentation sections to get started. So the About the ACS will contain an information guide, which is a great overview and explanation of the ACS, dives a little bit deeper than the previous slides I just went over. It also has a sample of the ACS questionnaire by year and much more. The data section will provide direct links to data tables and a variety of data tools to actually pull data. And the technical documentation, as stated, this section contains technical documentation, such as the code list, which is very important for today's webinar concerning NAICS codes on industry and how they cross over and cross-reference to census codes for industry, which the ACS uses. And here you can also find geography changes as well as table list. Now also links to our webinars, including this one, as well as other helpful items can be found in the Guidance for Data Users section. And the Guidance for Data Users section also includes handbooks for specific data users, recommendations for which data tool and tables are best for your needs, and much more. Now, as for actually accessing ACS data, there are several sources available, including the data section on the ACS webpage I just kind of briefly went over. But to name a few of these tools are the Quick Facts, which provide selected statistics for all states, counties, cities, and towns with a population of 5,000 or more. The Census Business Builder, providing selected demographic data from the ACS and economic data from the Census Bureau to help users start or grow a business, or basically just to understand the business landscape. There's also the API, the Application Programming Interface, which lets developers create custom apps to reach new users and makes key demographic, socioeconomic, and housing statistics more accessible than ever before. There's also the Census COVID-19 Data Hub, providing demographic and economic resources to assist communities concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. And the main tool I do want to focus on here today is the data.census.gov. And this is the Census Bureau's main dissemination platform to actually receive or pull ACS data. And all ACS tables starting in 2010 are available in data.census.gov. So let's take a moment now. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a live table or a live tab to go over data.census.gov. Okay, so once you're on data.census.gov, this is the home page. The first thing you'll see is a search bar right in the center of the screen. So here you can type in keywords. You want to be specific and keep the words limited to find tables you're looking for specific topics. If you do happen to know a table, I do always recommend data users or table you like. I do recommend data users actually note that table ID, because you can simply punch in a table ID here and it'll take you right specifically to that table that you typically like to use. If you're just getting started or you're just kind of browsing around, what I like to use is advanced search. So I'm going to go ahead and click the advanced search feature right here. And on the left-hand side, I can now begin to narrow in my filters of exactly what I want to view or what I'm looking for. For today's webinar, we're interested in certain industries, specifically NAICS code 71 and 72. So I'm going to go ahead and click Topics. I'm going to go to Employment, and I'm going to select Industry. Now you see my filters begin to build over on the left-hand side. And since I'm interested in ACS data, I'm going to go ahead and click Surveys, the American Community Survey. I'm going to use the 5-year estimates. And I'm going to use the detail tables. Now, detail tables are as they sound. They are the tables that provide the most detail per the topic that you're selecting. So I'm going to go ahead and click detail tables. And now you see that filter built in over on the left-hand side as well. Now on the bottom right corner, I'm going to go ahead and click Search. And this is going to provide me a full list of tables that are provided. So we see there's 15 tables available. I'm going to go ahead and enhance my view to view all 15. And there's my list of tables provided with the filters that I selected. Now, a specific table I want to point out today is B24031, which is industry by median earnings in the past 12 months for the civilian employee population 16 years and over. So once I load this table up, I can kind of narrow in my filters to make the screen a bit bigger, keeping my full list of results here on the left-hand side. And as I scroll down here, what we can notice is that our industries, 71 and 72, fall under the arts, entertainment, and recreation, and accommodation and food services here, has a median earnings of $18,683. It even breaks out a little bit further for you, arts, entertainment, and recreation, as well as accommodation and food services. Now, this is for the United States as a geography as a whole. So reverting back to those geographies that the ACS can provide, I'm going to go ahead and add some geos in. And based on our topic today, the first thing I think of is Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'm going to go ahead and add in Las Vegas, Nevada, or Las Vegas City, Nevada into our table. I'm going to go ahead and click place. I'm going to start narrowing in. I'm going to go ahead and click my state to filter this, Nevada. I'm going to scroll down and I will find Las Vegas City, Nevada. Now, once I select Las Vegas City, Nevada, I'm going to exit this, you can then see how the table begins to break out and specifically show data for the specific geography. Now, going back just to build out that hierarchy of our geographies, I can click Geo again. I can click this back button just to go back a bit. And I want to add in the county that encompasses Las Vegas City. So I'm going to click county. I'll go down to Nevada. And then from here, I'll click Clark County, Nevada. And let's say I also want to add in the state. I can just use this back button here, go back. I'm going to add in the state. I'm going to add in Nevada as well. And now what we have here is we have all three geographies built into our table, and it all will represent estimates for the specific industry of arts, entertainment, recreation, accommodation, and food services. What's also neat about data.census.gov is you can actually manipulate the table itself by narrowing in the cells just to give you a better view. You can also actually, if you would like, to click this columns item over on the right-hand side and take away some of the things you may not want to see on the table itself. But it is pretty neat that you're able to manipulate the table and see what you're actually looking for with a better view. Another table I'd like to point out, just looking at some of the information we have here, if we scroll down, is table C24050, which is industry by occupation. So I click this. What's pretty awesome is all my geographies remain in the table. And as you scroll down, we will find each occupation set and then the industries which fall underneath of them. And you'll see the total number of individuals working in that specific occupation, like management and business, as it pertains to the industry of art and entertainment. The service occupation has the most, as we can see here for the arts and entertainment, some pretty large numbers there in the services occupation as far as the industry. Another interesting table would be sex by industry. So here we get into demographics, so we can view males that work in the NAICS 71 and 72. We see that here for our industries, and we also have the females as well. So this is pretty good information you can pull from data.census.gov. One other tool I'd like to share with you is actually our microdata tool. So in the essence of time, I'm not going to dive too far into how I created this table, but these are tables that you can actually create if you're looking for information that's not already pre-tabulated in data.census.gov. So this is what the microdata tool uses is the public use microdata sample, which is roughly 2/3 of the full sample size pulled from the ACS with weight added in for confidentiality reasons. And also, what it does is a little bit different than data.census.gov. It actually only breaks down to the PUMA level. So you won't be able to go as granular as county or census tract, but it does go down to the PUMA level, which is the public use microdata area, which is areas that contain 100,000 population or greater. So what I did to create this table was I pulled specific census codes as they relate to NAICS codes using the code list in our technical documentation page. And I pulled the census codes for 8590 and 8680, which relate to 71395 NAICS and 7224 NAICS respectively. And from here, I also built in the PUMAs that make up Las Vegas City, as well as added in the race descriptions. And here you can simply see accounts based on race description that work in the specific industries and within each PUMA. So for some more information on this, you can actually go to census.gov/ACS, click on our microdata section right on the left-hand side, and there's a wealth of information there to kind of get you started in actually using the microdata tool, which is a great tool to use. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to our presentation. All right, so after viewing ACS data available through data.census.gov, we also want to take a look at some of the differences between the ACS and econ programs and things to be mindful of. So first, two main differences that are noticed are ACS creates estimates based on surveying at the household level, or the econ programs create estimates based on the establishment level or company or firm level. The ACS also categorizes industry by census codes, which I was speaking just briefly about using the microdata tool, whereas the econ uses the NAICS, and this can be cross-referenced on our ACS website using the code list and the technical documentation area of the web page. Now, there are also geographic differences. Some of the geographic levels are similar but are not the same. So, for example, the ACS uses places, where the econ uses economic places. There's also differences between ZICTA, or zip code tabulation area, and zip codes, which is used by econ. So first, talk about places just a bit. So essentially talking about cities and towns. So for the majority of places in the United States, they are the same between the econ program and the ACS. In the 12 New England areas, or 12 New England states, however, econ programs treat minor civil subdivisions as econ places, whereas the ACS publishes both places and minor civil divisions, which are county subdivisions. Now, another difference is zip codes, or ZICTAs. So zip codes correlate to USPS zip code boundaries and are used by econ programs. However, the ACS, as I stated, uses the zip code tabulation areas, or ZICTAs for short. And ZICTAs are configured by the Census Bureau and are created to ensure enough households are actually within each ZICTA. Now, important to note that zip codes and ZICTAs are very, very similar and only have very minute, small differences between them. And in fact, most ZICTAs are the same as their zip code counterpart. As far as tribal data are covered in econ programs as tribal-owned businesses within consistent geographies, whereas the ACS produces tribal data as a race, American Indian, Alaska Native, and publishes these data by specific tribal geographies, such as reservations and trust lands. Now, as for public establishments and public or legal statistical areas, census econ programs publish data on the entities themselves, such as schools and governments, whereas the ACS provides data within legal statistical areas like school districts and state legislative districts as geos themselves. Now, the ACS also publishes geographies such as census tracts that I spoke about, urban and rural areas, and PUMAs, going back to the microdata tool, which the econ programs do not. So closing out the ACS section this afternoon, if you have any further interest in the ACS data moving forward and like to see how other users are actually using the ACS data, you can look no further than the American Community Survey Data Users Group, and you can follow the link at the bottom of the slide. So this group improves understanding and the value of the ACS. It helps promote information sharing among users. There's also discussion threads where users will go in there and talk about technical issues or just certain questions they may have actually using data.census.gov, or different topics they may be interested in as far as the ACS is concerned. The site does provide information on upcoming ACS data events. So the website does contain PowerPoint presentations and some video recordings from past data user conferences. And membership is free, and myself and my colleagues are members of this group that's consistently growing, and currently it's at a max users of 3,600 users, I believe, on the website itself. If you do use ACS data, please stay in touch with us with telling us how you actually are using the data. So, for example, if you've made a major change in your community, helped your community, or expanded your business using ACS data, you can visit the link here at the bottom of the slide. Myself or my colleagues will work with you to create your story and have the story actually posted on our webpage. And these are just great testimonials to provide further support for the importance of the data collected through the American Community Survey. So before I hand it back over, here's some more information on keeping in touch. We have our website, census.gov/ACS. We do have an email as well as a phone number to keep in touch with us if you have further questions. You can also sign up for and manage alerts on the ACS news and events through GovDelivery. And you can also connect with us on social media by using the hashtag ACS Data. And also, if you do end up using ACS data in your reports or applications, please be sure to source us, as this helps promote ACS data and allow other data users to know actually where you found the data. So thank you for your time this afternoon, and now I'll turn it back over to Linda for some Q&A.
Thank you, everyone, for your interest and time attending today's webinar. Thank you, Dan, Terry, Arlene, and Charles, for presenting our audience with a wide range of data that we have from the Census Bureau. So before we begin the Q&A portion of this webinar, please take note of the contact information on this slide. For anyone that may be interested in a hands-on in-person training, we have data dissemination specialists that are available to provide this service. Now, as a reminder, we are focusing our Q&A on today's topic, and we'll be accepting questions related to today's topic. If you have questions on other topics, please feel free to send us an email at census.askdata@census.gov. For right now, to ask your question, please use the raise your hand feature and unmute yourself so that you may ask your question. And in our virtual room with me today, we have subject matter experts from programs that you've seen today, so you may hear new voices answering your questions. Let's take a look and see.
Linda, there was a question that came into the chat regarding the availability of this presentation. Are we going to make this available to everyone to access?
Yes. This presentation, along with the slides, the recording the slides, and also the transcript should be available on our site within 5 to 10 business days. You can find the recording under the Census Academy on census.gov. Thank you for your question. That's a great question. All right, let's give it a few minutes. But while we're waiting, I wanted to mention that we have a new tool, My Community Explorer. If you have not seen it, please check it out. It is a great tool that brings together demographic and economic data together to explore your community. And we'll give it another minute to see if anyone would like to ask questions. Okay, at this time, I do not see outstanding questions in the Q&A feature. So I would like to make a quick announcement. The next webinar in the series is going to be on healthcare, and it is going to be on May the 19th at 2 o'clock. I'll give it another minute to see if we may have additional questions here. All right, with no additional questions at this time, I would like to express our thanks to everyone again for attending today's webinar. This concludes today's webinar. Have a great day, everyone.